They swear it's haunted. The ghost walks that farm at night. Some say it's her. Only just town folk talk, really.
What Josiah Saw is a 2021 horror slash thriller movie about three siblings that are called home after an oil company wants to buy their farmhouse home that they grew up in, which is full of secrets. The movie's an atmospheric mystery movie centered around trauma, religion, a whole host of bad choices. And it's moody and patient, definitely lives in the slow burn category of films. I mean, it's essentially told in three separate parts. Each part is centered on one of the siblings of this broken family. There is Tom, who appears to be a bit simple, and he's the only one left at the farm who takes care of both it and his aging father, Josiah, who's a drunk and abusive to him. Tom is haunted by the death of his mother, Miriam, who hanged herself outside the church many years ago, and Tom was the one to find her. Also, this myth about the ghost of Miriam that is told by the townsfolk, where she appears from time to time, either on the farm or on the road adjacent to the farm. So one evening, Josiah, while sleeping, sees the ghost of Miriam, and then he tells Tom that she said she's burning in hell and they need to prepare the house and put things in order to save her. Then there's Eli. Eli is the older brother of the three, and he's been in and out of trouble throughout his entire life. He's been on parole, he deals drugs, he's in deep debt to a local bookie. He's also the go-to person whenever the law needs to round up the usual suspects for something gone wrong. So, in order for him to get out from under the thumb of the bookie, he agrees to take part in the theft of a chest of gypsy gold. Also, there's a missing little girl in the mix. Mary is the middle child, and her turmoil is manifests itself completely internally. She's married to her husband Ross, and they seemingly have a comfortable life on the surface. But due to an incident that happened to her 20 years ago, she is now sterile, and so she regrets that decision, and she's desperate to adopt a child. So she's on several forms of medication. She's routinely emotionally unstable. She works out as a way to cope and is clearly searching for a way to normalize her life. She thinks that a child is the best way for her to do that. If this feels like three different stories that could each be a movie in and of itself, that's kind of correct. I mean, it's also partially the only real issue with the film that I had, and that is the first act is really clunky, and the pacing of the movie in that first section is really off. So basically, the movie could have used just a better framing device in general. So, all right, it's about these three siblings, and the stories are each divided up between them kind of equally. But the way it starts off, we don't know that. And so the first part of the story deals with Tom and Josiah with very little mention of Eli or Mary. And we end up learning very little about Tom and Josiah themselves. Instead, it kind of is all driven by the appearance of the ghost of Miriam. So framing it like this ends up feeling like it's all about the farm and the supernatural event. So when the story then shifts for the first time and we go to Eli and we stay with him for the entire story, it ends up being kind of jarring. By the time we get to Mary's story, it's clear what the filmmakers are trying to do, and that all works fine. And then when the story brings it all back to the farm, when they all come together to discuss the oil deal, then it all kind of comes to a head, and all of that resolves in a way that is satisfying. I just think if they had established the siblings in the first part of the film, maybe even like show them as kids and then jump to each story of them as adults, I think it would have just allowed a more consistent direction during the opening of the film, and it wouldn't have been so jarring when we just completely shift the story to Eli. Also, that's the other thing. Tom's story is sort of lighter on details than the other two, and I think it's specifically done to hold back information to have some bigger reveals at the end, which does work, but I think they misuse the time spent in the beginning, and Tom's story could have used a little more fleshing out. The movie has some excellent subtle performances from the cast and does a great job of slowly unraveling a mystery that you didn't even know was there. I mean, all of it is buried in this trauma of these three siblings' lives, and as they peel away the different layers, you learn more and more through the choices they made and the things they did, and so the full story starts to come to life. The movie's use of minimal lighting and patient camera work establish a great moody vibe that really works well for the film. My biggest complaint of the visual style is it incorporates a high shutter speed thing, and that's something I'm just not a big fan of. I mean, the high shutter speed style was made famous years ago by the movie Gladiator, where specifically these action sequences were filmed very super clear, and it removes a lot of the motion blur. But for some reason, this movie decided to incorporate it for the entire film, which I found a bit distracting. At the end of the day, this movie really does ride that line between horror and thriller. But gun to my head, I would probably put it in the thriller side. But I don't really mind that. I mean, I don't mind that line being a bit blurry here. The movie's creepy, atmospheric, and has some fantastically nuanced performances by the cast. I'd give it a B+, but let me know what you think.